Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. I'm Gemma Creagh and I'm chatting with director Lisa Mulcahy about her really wonderful film, Lies We Tell. Thank you for chatting with us. I'll kind of start from the beginning of the project, if that's okay. So can you tell me a little bit about working on the script and how it came together?
So I was working on a TV series and Elisabeth Gooch approached me, who's the writer of the film. And Elisabeth and I had met maybe in about 2016 or something like that on a writing course, an adaptation course. And we just really liked each other and got on well and kind of stayed in touch, occasionally. But anyway, she approached me, said she had this project. Would I be interested? I'm not sure at that stage if she had a full script or if it was just a treatment in the first 25 pages. But even knowing Elisabeth, if it was a treatment, it would have been a very, very well worked out and thought out treatment. So I said yes. She had already teamed up with Ruth, who's the producer, and there was this scheme that Screen Ireland were running, the POV scheme, which was basically to promote female voices in the creative roles within the film industry, and so that's how we got together. And then we went through the process to apply to be chosen as one of the POV films. That took a couple of rounds, and then eventually we were one of the 4 films that were chosen to be produced.
There's been some absolutely incredible films come through this, and this is just another example. I didn't realize that. One of the things I saw in the credits was that you and that the budget was a little bit higher than the POV scheme. So was there another pot that you guys were able to access for anything there?
No, it wasn't. I think the budget included, I think the POV screen was a certain amount, but there was also a certain amount over and above that, which was development. So it was the development of the project. So like a number of projects before they were selected were given initial development. So that the teams could work on their pitches and on their scripts and everything like that. And then, so there was the development project. So no, we weren't everybody the same. My understanding is everybody the same amount of money.
Yeah, because it's so little for a beautiful, polished period piece. And I mean, the caliber of films that has come out of the POV scheme, that is it, the I'm Not Your Mother, like all anyone's that I have seen, again, like they look like they've cost $1 million. Like like when you look at them.
Yeah, so You Are Not My Mother is one of them, and Sunlight, and
Antonia Campbell's Hughes, It Is In Us All. And they're all so different in tone and so sort of brave and very strong in what they're saying. For like, like that's one of the things that I think is so interesting about the POV scheme. But this does not look like what essentially is almost like a fraction of a budget that you'd expect from a really, really polished period piece. But back to the development, actually, this stage. So this went through like a number of different rounds with Screen Ireland.
Yeah, until then we were chosen to be one of the films. And then once we were chosen, then there was further development of the script. So we had a script editor, which was Sarah Golding, and we had our Screen Ireland project manager was Dervla Regan, and so we did did script development, and Elisabeth and Sarah, and we all kind of worked together. But obviously Elisabeth did all the rewriting and stuff like that. So really by the time I mean we were ready to film this actually at least a year, if not more, script wise before we actually did, but just because of COVID and various other restrictions that were, I was working and stuff like that. But by the time the script was finished, it was, we, during the shooting, in the run up to the shooting, we did virtually no changes to the script at all.
It's so strong. Like the writing is so strong. Like everything in it, it's just a really beautiful film across the board, from performances, direction, creative choices, everything.
Mm.
It, like, and it's a real treat to watch on that big screen. It's definitely not
Yeah.
something I'd wait for to filter down for, um like, because of the tension. Like, as a viewer, I think you're just so tense. And I think in many ways it's a perfect post-COVID film because it is about a woman trapped in a house. Do you feel like those themes, how would that impact the way you'd start developing this then as a director?
Oh, well, I mean, the thing is, Elizabeth, when she heard about the POV scheme, she had this story and she had this idea and she wanted to retell this story and to retell this character's journey, and she felt that it would suit the POV because it was all set. It could all be set in one house. The original book isn't, but this could all be set in one house. So that was a really important thing, because it had to be manageable. I mean, some of the other films had lots and lots of locations, but for us, actually, we shot the whole thing on that location. And I mean, obviously, this was done before COVID, and the idea was conceived and written before really the Me Too movement completely exploded. But the idea of investigating the abuse of power and how we can react to that, and how we can all react to the abuser who was trying to control everybody, is really fascinating. And it was really a fascinating subject to explore. It's nothing old and nothing new, that's for sure.
Fortunately.
Um, but still, it was really, really interesting, and obviously a period piece, but very, very modern, very
Very,
modern.
very timely, very subversive. There's, I think, also, like, post-COVID, obviously there was such a high level of domestic abuse reported. There was, like, it's one of the things where, everything's always gendered, especially when it comes to power dynamics and control. I think it looks at financial control, coercive control. What you do very, very well is how it ramps up as you're watching it. So there's like a charm, there's a bit of tension, there's a bit of back and forth, and it's just that natural ramp up so that, it gets to a very heightened place, but it's a very natural way. And it's so tough for the actors. One of the things that I thought was the most amazing thing is Agnes is a new find. Her performance is so quiet and powerful and amazing. Like, how do you say work with somebody? Like, how do you kind of like get them to elicit this?
Well, I mean, if you get your casting right, if you get that initially, you've really done so much of the work, because it's in casting. When Aggie auditioned, we just all really loved her, and then she did a callback, I'm sure, and it was, none of this was in the room because it was during COVID, and it was at the height of COVID, when COVID had just happened. It was in the summer of 2020, and so it was all Zooms and self tapes and stuff like that. But she just possessed these qualities of a quiet power and tenacity, and but also in vulnerability. And Aggie just possessed these. And she, part of Aggie is Maud, part of Maud is Aggie, and that's often the case with casting. I'm not, of course, Aggie can play characters that are completely different, but she naturally has that vulnerability, as well as a steely rod that drives it all.
One of the most surprising things, in that I didn't recognize him as familiar as I am with him, is Chris Walley in this film. The lovable,
I know, yeah.
Corkonian.
I'm sure most people. Well, Chris is an incredible actor. He trained in RADA. He did he did really such a beautiful audition for this role. Because the scenes I gave them to audition, I did a couple of scenes, and Edward could have been perceived as this kind of buffoon, but of course, it's hard not to sympathize with Edward because he's completely under the power of his father. He has chosen to be so. So he is not without blame. Of course he isn't, but it's hard not to sympathize with him. And Chris, one of the scenes that we auditioned was a scene closer to the end, which could have been approached from, an actor could have chosen to approach it from the more kind of comedic, or it could have been approached from the true kind of emotion of what's going on in the scene. And Chris just did an absolutely beautiful audition, such a heartbreaking audition, really. He's just so terrific in it. He's such a talented actor.
Yeah.
They all are.
And but I think there's real natural chemistry because it's so, like, I mean, it's a small enough cast. Everyone is like all the tension and plot comes from like that back and forth tennis match between everyone who's there. How important, and again, because it's a period piece, like there's so much more restraints put on, like and the production design, oh my God, is absolutely 100%. Even the richness of the clothes are beautiful, but I presume there's even constraints to where you can film and what time you can film, that you can't angle that way because there's, I don't know, like a a load of electrical wires and things, like how do you as a director kind of like approach that? Do you have everything sort of completely laid in, because 20 days is not enough?
Well,
it's not a lot of time.
I mean, the key to successfully achieving a schedule like this is prep. Yeah, you've got to prep properly for it, because for me, if I look at my final call sheet of the shoot, I have it here, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 scenes to shoot, and and all of those scenes are important. So you have to prep properly. That location was an amazing location because although obviously it has electricity and stuff like that, it has been very undamaged relatively by modern life. So of course they've got electric lights, and they've got smoke alarms and stuff like that. But things like smoke alarms and stuff are easy to exclude by simple VFX in post. And we were quite clever about how we cover up light switches. Sometimes I had this little set of miniature silhouettes that belonged to my great grandmother, and we would sometimes use them to cover, if you see the film again, to cover some of the light switches. And Caroline, our production designer, just were very clever about how we cover radiators. There really was surprisingly little, and also because we didn't really use lights. So and I love wide angle lenses, and so we had a super wide angle lens, which I cheered every time we took it out of the box, and you'll see it's used a lot. So you can't have anything. So sometimes we had to vis effects out a few things, but really, the house is so intact in a way. I mean, the kitchens are incredible, and it's extraordinary to find kitchens and little corridors in that condition these days, because more often than not they have been modernized.
And tell me about getting the visual sort of set up with and working on that with Eleanor, who's the DOP. She just, like, it's spectacular. Every frame is a painting.
That's Eleanor and myself had when Eleanor had sent me some of her work, and then she read the script, and she was just so enthusiastic about it, and so just so positive and keen about it, and although I hadn't worked with her before, we asked her to do it, and it was really exciting. She was so excited about it. I went out and I'd taken a load of photographs at the location, and I don't take a super camera with me. I just always do it on my phone. I always frame the photographs in widescreen, even if I'm not shooting widescreen. I always do widescreen, and I grade them a little bit, and I just take the photographs to kind of give an idea of what I'm thinking about and of the imagery that I like, even though I'm just doing it on a phone. And I sent her a bunch of photographs before we actually met in person, just to whet her appetite. And then we just had lots of chats, and we talked about various different. She went and she got some references. I like to have to pick a photograph that I stick on my notebook when I'm working on a job. And so often, particularly if it's a period piece, I'll go into the National Gallery and just buy some of their postcards. And I think I got this one in the National Gallery. You can see it. It's just a very famous painting, but this is in the National Gallery in London, and it's called An Experiment in a Bird in the Air Pump, and it's just beautifully lit and painted, and it's quite a grotesque picture. Because it's a bird basically been experimented on and being killed. And so we just talked about various painters and looked at images, and we knew that we would be limited in how we could shoot it, in the sense that we wouldn't have a lot of moving tracks, but we would be moving the camera. So we used handheld, and we used a combination of Steadicam, and we used a slider, and then sometimes we just let the scene just sit and be still. So those images, like there's an image of Maud and she's waiting for the family to arrive, and she's sitting in her chair and the fire's lighting, and it is a painting, so we just talked through lots of things that excite us and interest us. And I like to plan, and sometimes I have a very clear idea of how I like to shoot something, and sometimes I don't. I want to see what the actors are going to do, but I might know that I want to do the scene handheld. So we just did lots of talking.
Brilliant. And with regards to even things on the script, again, like it's such a kind of constraint when it comes to shooting. And then, if light isn't working, if it's not matching, do you go back and rejig it? Do you have everything kind of in place that there's a plan B that you can hop to? Did anything kind of change as you were going through production and post-production with regards to the script as well?
Not really, no. You see that in relation to the light, we knew that we were going to do the interior night scenes with candlelight, and just with candlelight, and we had some candlelight off screen as well. And sometimes we had some reflectors or whatever that would just help us bounce light around, particularly in the day scenes. But so we had these double wick candles, and if you see in the big wide shots, those big painting shots, there's candles everywhere, but it beautifully illuminates the scene. So that was always going to be controllable, and we had the rooms had shutters, because these houses do, and so it was easy to block out the natural light. And in our day scenes, most of the scenes were shot, the day scenes were shot in the part of the house that is north facing, so it doesn't get direct sunlight. It never gets direct sunlight. So we were never going to have an issue of the sun coming in and then not being able to control it later in the day. Do you know what I mean? Because the sun never came in. So we always knew, okay, the level of light might be greater or lower, but, we weren't, there was very few occasions where there was difficulty about the light matching, because our natural light was so controllable. And sometimes, as when we were doing exteriors, we were running out of light. But the sensors on these cameras are so sensitive, that you really can shoot. It can really be almost dark, and it still can feel like daylight when you grade it. So we just thought all of these things through. You always have a plan B for everything, because some things happen. And plan Bs are often very exciting, because everybody just has to think quickly and move fast and act fast. But prep, talking about things and planning for things, that really solves a lot of your problems.
So you've been working on some really, really amazing TV shows at the moment. You've a great list of credits, and most recently The Tourist, which is again it's kind of hilariously funny with a lovely kind of vein of darkness. And again,
yeah,
it's brilliant to watch. Tell me a little bit about how, these two things maybe differ, but there's things that you can bring from that world into your filmic world.
Well, the tourist obviously has a way more money, and the tourist has a good budget. So what Stephen Murphy was the DOP on the tourist that I've just finished, and I've worked with Stephen 3 times already. Well, that was the third time. And so what that allows you is it allows you to conceive shots that require a more sophisticated camera equipment. So we did lots of Steadicam, we did lots of cranes, we did some drone stuff, we had lots of tracks, but we also did handheld, a lot of handheld. But it also shows that even though you've got a vastly different amount of money to play with, if your script is good and if your actors are good and if it's well thought out, you can still produce some really, really compelling work with not a lot of money. So that's the difference, is that you obviously can, with more money, you can be more inventive about how you shoot things. But I mean, if you've no money, you can shoot something brilliant with just a handheld camera and no lights.
And tell me as well about, like how capturing that is so important with regards to picking the projects that you're working on as a director. Do you have like a bunch of things on a slate and you're like, well, of course I'm going to do a show like that. You're going to get to use so much cool equipment. You're working with great people. You build your network, you build your CV, but then also to do these smaller projects, but you get to completely create the world. That's really exciting. Like, can you just talk to me a little bit about how you pick the next thing that you work on? Because I know with regards to this, it's not always clear when the money will come in if you have something in development as well. Do you have like a slate of a bunch of things? Do you have like agents giving you offers? How does it work?
So I have an agent who will come to me with so she'll come to me and she say X such and such a company are looking for a lead director, or they're looking for a director for a block of this series, and we'll have a quick conversation if I don't know the series about whether it's something that I'm likely to want to do. Sometimes I'll read a script and then say, no, I don't want to do it. Or sometimes I'll pitch for it and I might get it or I might not get it. So it really all depends. I mean, what I want to do is I want to work on really good writing. So I don't particularly want to work on shows, even if they've got massive budgets, if the writing's not good. So, and at the moment, fortunately, I'm in a position to be able to choose. I had seen season 1 of The Tourist. It's just all of these elements, as you say. It's funny. It's got drama. It's got a big heart, and it's got action. And but primarily it's really excellent writing. And so when I was approached about this, even though it was just the middle block, I said, yeah, I'd like to do it because I knew it would be a great show. But yes, my primary interest is to work on great scripts that are telling really good stories with really, really engaging characters. Yeah.
And so that's something that you go for. And at the moment, just say, do you have a bunch of things, say, in development that you're waiting to come to fruition? Do you work with different writers? Do you?
So at the moment, I just have one feature film in development, which I wrote initially, and then Elisabeth came on board, Elisabeth Gooch, and we have both written this latest draft. It's a completely different story. It is about female resilience, but it's a contemporary story. Well, it's set in in Syria, and it's based on a true story. So that I'm hoping is going to be my next film, and we're just putting together the casting for it and doing some location work, and so really firing up to try and get that made. Yeah. So but apart from that, I don't have. If people approach me with feature film scripts, I'll generally read them and I'll get back very quickly about whether I'm interested or not. I suppose that my life is very busy because I do a lot of TV drama, and I have 3 children, and a very busy household life as well. So yeah, it's very busy trying to juggle all of these things.
Yeah, and that's I suppose that's it as well. When it is a feature film and when it's bigger budget, a lot of the time, if it's different funding pots, there's just so many things that you don't always know when they'll come in, and it's tougher. But
Yeah,
tell me,
it's extremely difficult to get feature films made, independent films that, that are that, and unless you have an A-lister cast, it's almost impossible.
and tell me about
Almost.
almost, but I mean,
Yeah.
this is across the line and it's wonderful. But tell me about the post on Lies We Tell. Like, so this is something it's shot over 20 days, but I presume on something like this there is a bit of VFX to cover up bits and bobs. I mean, the sound design and music is just beautiful because it's so tense and it really like elevates it, and you're on the edge of your seat. And just talk to me a little bit about that, what that process was like.
So, as much as I love post, it's a completely different thing than prepping and shooting. And Veronica Kaminska, who cut the film, I had worked with her a number of times as an assistant. In fact, I'd been working with her since 2014 as an assistant. She was working in Egg, and I had done a lot of work in Egg, and so she was assistant in a lot of the projects I'd done. And I really liked her, and I liked her sensitivity and her ideas. So we asked her to do this, and so we had a great time in the edit. She again loved the script, was very committed and to the project. And so once we finished the edit, to me, sound, I love sound. I think it brings a huge amount, brings a huge amount to a project in relation to atmosphere and tension and all of those things. And Asa Hand was our sound designer and our mixer and our composer. And I had worked again with Asa on a number of projects where he would have been maybe the sound editor, the sound designer. He'd also mixed a number of things, TV things I had done. And he had just recently started composing. He'd done a film or two with Ivan Kavanagh. And so he came aboard as composer. And that was very interesting because he's quite new to it, but we collaborated very closely on it. And yeah, he did an amazing job. And he knows how much I love sound. I mean, all the poor Asa, all the rustles, because if you're shooting in a period drama in a place that's so quiet, really, that the sounds really stand out. So, the sound of her moving in her dress, I hadn't driven mad because I said, oh, can we have a little more of the sound of her dress there? I just had driven Asa mad, but it just adds so much to the clarity and the tension or whatever, all of these little details,
and brings so much awareness to her physicality as well, which just plays such a big part of, like she's I mean, I think she's referred to as a catch or like a goal, and you're like, yeah, instead of like a human that has wants and needs. I mean, and like my thing is, I'd love to say, oh, everything is totally different now, like aren't we completely independent? But there's still elements of this in today's society. There's still that misogyny,
absolutely.
that ownership, and that's why I think this is so powerful, that message, and resonates so well with people. And one of the most harrowing scenes in the film was that moment with Agnes and Chris, and it's like there's a violence to it, but it's really powerful. And I noticed you worked with an intimacy coordinator. I was just wondering if tell me a little bit about like the importance of capturing that in a safe way, and how you did it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a scene. I didn't really do much rehearsal with the cast before the film, apart from because these days you don't really get much time. And now Aggie and myself had worked with each other on Ridley Road, so we knew each other very well. And I had individual conversations with all the actors, but the script was in such good shape and I knew we got a great cast. But that scene was the one scene that we did rehearse properly because it involved not only stunts, but it also involved intimacy. So we rehearsed one day before we started shooting with Aggie and Chris, and we had our intimacy coordinator and our stunt coordinator, and we just in a room And it's like a dance. You rehearse these scenes like exactly as you would rehearse a dance or a stunt, where every move, every position of every hand or leg is rehearsed, and it's all worked out very, very slowly. And so the actors know exactly what they're going to be doing, what's going to happen to them, and they are completely in control of both of their journeys throughout that scene. So that when you rehearse and you do it very slowly, you gradually increase the pace so that when you run it at full pace, they still know exactly what they're doing. So every move in that scene is completely worked out. And Aggie and Chris are friends, but also they felt very safe with each other. Roisin, our intimacy coordinator, is wonderful with them. And the younger actors do respond very well to intimacy coordinators. Sometimes it's more difficult with older actors who've done many of these scenes before. And so, for a certain part of the scene, you're working with the stunt coordinator, and then that baton is passed to the intimacy coordinator, but it's all about moves. So actually, when we shot the scene on the day, it was without stress or tension. Some of the crew found it difficult to listen to it and to listen to it, because obviously there were very few people in the room when we were actually shooting it. And I always wanted just to shoot it from her point of, not her point of view. I always wanted to shoot it on her, and not do lots of editing. I just wanted the scene to play out on her. So there is initially a bit of editing at the start of the scene, but once the scene gets going, really, it's just all on her. So it's quite difficult to watch.
Yeah, you could feel the audience squirm. Like in the screening, like you could really feel how uncomfortable it made people and how visceral it was, but how important it is to sort of capture that, because again, like that is part of abuse, that is part of control, and it's something that's been used the world over on women and people that are vulnerable. So like it was very difficult to watch, but it was very powerful, and I think
it is very powerful. Yeah. And I mean, and when we were in the edit before we had locked pictures, we got one or two requests or questions back from some of our execs asking, could we, do you have a shot of Chris or whatever? And my answer would be, why would I do that? Do you know what I mean? It's and in a way, I think it was because you look for a bit of a tension release. And by cutting away from her, that would give you that momentary release. But we never wanted to do that, so we didn't.
And this film has had such a successful festival run, and it's going to be released now in cinemas. What has the response been like? Because again, this is just something thematically it's very close to home, I'd say, for a lot of people, even though it is that kind of heightened world in the past. I'm just wondering, has there been much of a
well, I mean, we've screened, the film has screened last night, and then it was in Galway, and then we screened it at a film festival in France, actually, and the response has been amazing. Across the board. I mean, the French audience is screened for 4 days at this incredible festival in Dinard, and the cinemas for all the films were completely full. And then there'd be Q&As afterwards, and the French audience is, completely engaged and primarily, I mean, I suppose an older audience, maybe, kind of averaging 50 or whatever, but incredibly engaged, asking, really insightful questions. And the response has really been very positive. It's not an easy ride, but there is some humor in there, and also the performances are just so good, and it is also engaging. It's just I'd love more people to see this film, and hopefully just to get people into the cinemas is the big deal, though.
And actually, I would say it's not an easy ride, in the sense that there's lots of tension, but it's a very easy watch in that you're engaged, you're on board with all the characters. Again, like the writing, the dialogue, it's like this kind of back and forth unspoken subtext, like you're really following it, like you're following a tennis match.
Yes. Yeah.
You're invested in all the characters. Even the unlikable ones are so interesting. Like I think a real like layered, textured villain is fascinating, and that's something you really have captured there. Where like in the beginning, he's a bit charming, maybe he was a bit hard done by, like like, and you get the nuance of it all. So I would say it's a very interesting watch, and it's very engaging watch, and like and it is about resilience and strength and power in subversive ways. So I would say it is a very easy watch. I would watch it again, no bother. It's not like one of those films that you're like, oh god, that was really powerful, but like never again.
Yeah, Saving Private Ryan, that's one of my ones. Saving Private Ryan I could never watch again. Never.
Where you come out of it and you're like sweating, exhausting. But I mean, it's part of the cinematic experience as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you want to elicit an emotional response, from the audience, and they want that too.
And this definitely does that, and it's like there's parts of it that are upbeat, but it's just beautiful. So definitely one for the big screen. I'd hardly recommend it.
Yes.
So thank you so much for chatting with us.
No, listen, no problems.
That was amazing.
Great. You're very welcome. Thanks a million.